this to record because we're recording the talks for those who want to see them afterwards. So no pressure, Lily. You're now on video as well. So it's lovely for you to join us today.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me.
So you're here as one of the sponsors. We can see your lovely sign behind you, Brightside Wealth Management, Exhibit A. So it's great to have you here today. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and about Brightside? What's that all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a financial advisor, part of Brightside Wealth Management. We are actually based here in Market, which is on Fulham Road. And we work with both individual clients and corporate clients. And I think one of the things that we're really trying to do as a business is kind of break down those barriers. I think sometimes it can be difficult to understand when you might need a financial advisor. It's difficult enough in your own personal life, let alone when you're then trying to run a business as well. So we're just trying to kind of break down those barriers and try to get people to understand that actually the people that we deal with are normal people. We can help people with any aspects of kind of protection planning, investment planning, tax planning, right the way through to inheritance tax planning at the other end.
Great. So thank you, Lily, just for explaining that, because sometimes we can maybe think about, phrases like wealth management and think, oh, this is for big people that are investing in stocks and shares. But you're saying, no, this is for us normal, everyday people. And I know, we've kind of, your talk's titled kind of planning for bounce back. So it's just how to help us as everyday people plan your way forward. So thank you for just sharing. Yes, this is about everyday people. It's not about the super duper stocks and shares people. So what we've been doing with each of our sponsors as guests in these interviews is just thinking about what can we learn. We've all been through a huge number of pressures and changes through coronavirus, haven't we? And it's what can we learn so far around dealing with this challenge that will help us move forward in the bounce back for business. So as a business, how have you responded to the challenge yourself that you've faced over the last kind of 12, 14 months?
Yeah, it's been an interesting one, and it's been difficult for lots of people. I mean, as many people on here will know, usually when I go and see clients, I go and see them in their homes, or I go and see them at their place of work, and spend a lot of time actually physically being in front of people, which is what we love. And we've had to kind of adapt quite quickly and effectively flip everything that we do on its head by switching to online. And it's been interesting, especially for clients. And truthfully, I think some clients have found it more straightforward to be able to do things over Zoom. But what we've just really tried to do is to make sure that we've been there for clients, especially if we've got some older clients, for example, that maybe haven't been able to get out and about as much. So it's just trying to make sure that we can be there for them as much as possible. And also, I think one of the things that we can all do as businesses is keep up that high level of customer service, letting clients know that you're available, letting them know that they can contact you. If the office is closed, how else can they get hold of you? So just trying to make sure that you're kind of still facing them as much as you can, albeit behind a screen.
Yeah, great. And I think there's a really key principle for us to all learn as businesses from what you've said there, which is be really clear still on what it is you're there to do and around the standards that you want to maintain. So you've talked there of the challenge of moving to, kind of online Zoom conferencing rather than face to face, but still being really clear of the standards you expect and that you want to deliver. So that's a really good reminder for us all as we are looking to bounce back. Get clear on the standards, get clear on the purpose, and make sure you maintain those, whatever adaptations you might make. So you've talked about adapting there as a business, having to, like many of us, perhaps switch to get using Zoom. Who knew the word Zoom before 14 months ago? And now it's become part of our language. It's become a verb and a noun. Are you Zooming? Yes, I'm Zooming, all those sorts of things. So you've had to learn to do that and learn to adapt. So what have you learned through that adaptation?
Yeah, I think for us, it's just being about making sure that you're there for people. I think sometimes as a business, there are times that come along and it forces you to change. And what we've all experienced with coronavirus has been one of those times. And actually, I think change isn't a bad thing. So like I've said, for some clients, they found that actually Zoom is easier for them. So for us, it's just trying to take what we've learned over the last few months and then trying to make that part of our everyday life moving forward. And once things do return to some form of normality, Also, one of the things that we've tried to do, like many people, I'm sure, is make the most of the time. If anyone's got spare time, it's just kind of making the most of that time so that when we can get out and about again, and we are all kind of back to working at full capacity, if some people aren't already, then you're really well placed to be able to go out and hit the ground running.
Yeah, yeah. And so this ability just to adapt, but you've talked there about actually some of the adaptations we've made, we can potentially use ongoing as well, which again is another important message for us to consider as we're looking about how we move forward. So I know from our conversation before this interview that you have perhaps some key questions that you think are important for business owners to consider, particularly around their purpose as they consider bouncing back. Because I know you talked about your key role is helping us, with our kind of personal finance, everyday people with their personal finance. But I know you kind of think there's a good link here in terms of us for business as well as we consider moving forward. So what are those key questions and how could they help us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things as business owners and those of us that run businesses that we're always trying to do is find that kind of work-life balance. So I've kind of got two key questions really, which is how does your business planning fit in your personal goals? And then actually it's about kind of making sure that it's fitting in with those goals. And also the second question or comment that I'd like people to think about is realizing perhaps that it does or doesn't fit. I think sometimes we can be guilty of all kind of running at a million miles an hour and trying to do so many things that we need to be able to take a step back and think, actually, this is what I wanted to achieve. How am I going to achieve that? Or it may be that I'm already there. So it's then about trying to kind of slow down and make the business work for you ultimately and fit around you.
Yeah. So again, really good reminder as we're looking about, in one sense, we'll never bounce back, will we? Because things are different now. So it's how we move forward. So as you're planning to move forward, it's just being really clear. What is it that I actually want? What is it I'm looking to achieve here? Get clear on that first, because that'll drive then what you do from that. So I know you've also considered some top tips for business at this time. And so what are some of the short-term top tips around perhaps business or personal kind of financial goals? What are they, do you think?
Yeah, of course. So again, if people have got slightly more time than they would usually have, one of the things we would always recommend to do is just try and regularly review any kind of direct debits that you've got, either through the business or personal. And it's really about making sure that you're trying to streamline the finances as much as possible, making sure that whatever you are paying for is good value ultimately. Also, when it comes to the business, trying to be as tax efficient as possible. So one of the examples that we see quite frequently is we've got clients and they are directors of their own limited company. More often than not, they end up kind of paying for their own life cover when we could put that through the company. And also just try and kind of keep on top of your own admin processes. If you've got processes that need to be tweaked, then try and get those sorted now so that they're kind of nice and clear for when you do move forward.
Yeah, great. And there are other people here who are, part of the Thunderbird spread, as we were talking earlier, that can help you with that. People like Kate can help you streamline those processes, can't they? So it's about get your purpose clear, then look at your processes, get those right now as you look at what you then want to achieve. And then, double check that income and expenditure bit. What do you actually need to be spending at the moment? And check some of those direct debits, because you might have set some stuff up earlier on that actually, I don't need to pay for that coming out now. And it's making sure you catch it early enough before the yearly renewal comes out and you think, I've just lost another £100 because that one's gone and I don't actually really need it. So that's some really good, simple, short-term tips for us. So what about some of the longer term tips? Are there top tips for us longer term, both as individuals and as businesses?
Absolutely. So again, it kind of comes back to my earlier question of how the business planning fits in with your personal goals. And for most people with their business and their personal life, they will have a date in their minds or an age in their minds that they want to either stop working or slow down. And this varies quite a lot between every individual, but it's about trying to plan for that as early as possible, really. Whether you decide that you want that business to carry on and you step back, if so, then trying to make sure that you are not everything that holds that business together, so that that business can easily be passed on, and it's got either some value without you as being the main person behind it as well. Also, if the idea is actually to sell the business and start taking some money out of the business, then again, just try and plan for that sooner rather than later, so that it's done in a tax efficient way for you. And equally, I think not being afraid to step away from the business and not being afraid to let somebody else kind of take control, but try to keep your own timescales as the main priority, because it's so easy to let that drift and just carry on.
Yeah, great, lovely, thank you. So depending what people want to do, what their plans are, but it's thinking about it now rather than thinking about it later on and then working towards it. So it's great. So Lily, you're a very people-facing business, and anybody, I mean, we know you because you're part of the chamber, you're on the committee of the chamber, so we got to know you really well. We know you're a very people-orientated person as well, and so if anybody didn't know that, clearly they're getting to see that from our chat today. So because you're people facing though as a business, what have you learnt about working with people, over this last year that you think might be helpful to other businesses to help them kind of move forward and bounce back?
Yeah, so I mean, you're absolutely right. I love sitting down in front of clients, and that's why I do it ultimately. And we're also very lucky that as a team, we all get on really well, quite a sociable bunch. So for us, not being in the office was quite difficult. From small things to you've got to pick up the phone to ask somebody a question, right the way through to actually just missing out on that kind of social aspect side. So one of the things that we've tried to do as an office is we will have regular Zoom calls that are not work related, but just to have a catch up, have a chat, and try and bring back some of that kind of where you just have a laugh with your colleagues, and just to try and keep that kind of office culture alive. I think especially if you've taken on new staff during the lockdowns, then it can be really quite difficult for those new staff to integrate and get to know the other employees. So it's just about trying to keep those kind of personal relationships going as much as you possibly can. And also equally, if you have, depending on people's businesses, some people have clients that not all of the conversations are work related. So if you have clients that you will have a normal conversation with, then it's trying to continue those as well and just make sure that you're still keeping those relationships going. Yeah,
great, lovely. And I think there's, again, great reminder, if we run a business where we have colleagues who work with us, being really mindful of their need to look out for them and care for them. And I would say particularly for those who are extroverts, if you're wondering, have I got extroverts here? It just isn't that they make lots of noise, but it is that they like to come in and discuss their thinking. And so actually, if they've been stuck at home, it's really important you're still trying to find opportunity to look after them there. But also a reminder for wider our customers, isn't it? Just to touch base with them and see how they are and show that personal pastoral interest. That's where you'll create that connection with customers, isn't it, as well? Yeah. So our time for you and I just to be chatting is almost at the close, and in a moment we'll see, we'll find out from Suzanne who's put any questions in the chat. So if you've not put questions in the chat yet, do pop a question for Lily. That could be a question either around her company of Brightside, or it could be, Olivia, can you tell me something that you've learned from this? You might have a specific question you want to put to Olivia about any top tips you might have. But the last question for you here, Olivia, from me is just around, is there anything else that you can offer our listeners, our series of Thunderbirds people here, to help them bounce back for business?
Yeah, so one of the things, just kind of going back to the earlier questions about the business planning fitting with your own personal goals and really trying to understand what those personal goals and timeframes are. One of the things that we can do to try and bring this to life is use a cash flow modelling system. Now, there are cash flow modelling systems out there, and if you can have access to one, then I would absolutely recommend doing so. If you haven't got access to one, then I'd be more than happy to help, and we can sit down with you and just go through that. There's no charge to do it. And really what it does is it gives you the time to actually sit and think about what you want to do, how long it's going to take you to do it, what to be at retirement, for example. And then we can literally forecast it for you. So it gives you a realistic idea of, okay, we may be so many years away and this is what we need to achieve in the meantime. Or we might find that we're pleasantly surprised and actually retirement plans and goals are on track. So if if you know anybody to do the cash flow, then absolutely I would recommend that. If not, we're more than happy to help with it.
Great, and that's a lovely offer, Olivia. So, you know, we're here all together as businesses, trying to look out for each other and help each other. And you're saying, look, if you've got someone great, if you haven't, come and chat to us. You can give them a free part to your service, which is just help them looking at that cash flow, which for us businesses is really key and really important. So, Olivia, thank you for sharing that thus far. Now let's have a look and see what our wonderful businesses here have as any questions. So Suzanne, have we got any questions in the chat room, or have we got a tumbleweed moment? Have they been so enthralled by Lily's top tips and advice? What have we got, Suzanne? Anything in the chat for us?
Well, I would like to encourage people to put things in the chat. We are a little sparse at the moment, so come along, because I'm chatterbox today and I do like to chatter, as you know.
So you've all heard it, folks. Suzanne is calling you to just give Olivia a nice little grilling and a few questions to.
Yes, that's right. Yes, let her work for her money. Look, there is a question that I could ask. Out of your many clients that you deal with, obviously this financial crisis being amongst them, and how have you as Brightside been able to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things that we made sure that we did when coronavirus first hit was actually just contact all clients, because there was a lot of noise, especially in the media, around the value of investments and how it may or may not be affecting people. And we just made sure that we'd made contact with everybody to put their minds at rest, really, but also just to make sure that they were okay, to see if anything had gone on with them. If we've got clients that perhaps take an income, if that income was still okay, if we had any clients that had lost jobs. So it's just about making sure that they know that we're here and we're trying to be proactive, not reactive, so that we're the ones that are contacting them and they haven't got to worry about it.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne, for that question. Olivia, again, another lovely reminder about actually what we should be about as businesses, which is just building deep relationship with our clients, and just, for what you've just talked about there is just looking out for them. And what you do is you create loyalty as a result of doing that. So if we're looking about how we move forward as businesses, there's another prime example. So thank you for sharing that one for us. So Suzanne, has your call to order brought some questions from our wonderful group of businesses? Have you got?
No, we haven't. It's all quite stunned silence. So keep them coming. You know, if you do think of something, you know what, as we're going on, we can always, come back to Lily with questions and things. So yeah, at the moment it looks like the chat box is pretty much there. So
okay, so if you've got a question, either wave your hands at us or pop it in the box. So I'm just going to scan through, because I'm onto 2 pages worth of people, just looking for any waving. I'm seeing various smiles.
Actually, something has come in.
Oh, brilliant.
Yes,
good. Who's got a question for us?
This is from Kate, actually. How long does a typical first meeting take?
Okay, yeah. So generally the first meeting we'd allow an hour. And it's really just to give the client a chance to get to know me as much as anything, just to find out what their kind of immediate needs and goals are ultimately. And then from that, we would start to put a plan together, depending on what they need.
And just a question for myself, actually, following on from that, you did mention about the cash flow management, or the cash flow management, but prior to a meeting, do you have any sort of like templates or anything that we can note down, that we can come forearmed with you?
Yeah. So we have an expenditure and income spreadsheet, which we can always send over in advance if people want to go through that. And then we can use that as kind of the basis for our discussion. And then I would tend to say to people, just have a bit of a think about what you really want to achieve. If you've got anything in the immediate future that you want to plan for. If not, then it's just kind of a general conversation to get to understand their full picture.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks, Suzanne. So we've had a little bit of an insight into how it can work with Olivia, the sorts of things she can offer you. You can review before you arrive if you were going to have a meeting with her. But if you've got any questions more about what she's learned or what Brightside have learned that might be able to help you, maybe you've got a burning question in terms of right, I'm looking to develop my business, to move it forward in this new challenge. I wonder if Olivia's got an answer to this burning question, which of course could put her right in the spot. She might be able to say, do you know what? I don't know about the answer to that one, but maybe you've got something. I'd really like to find this out. If so, give us a wave or pop that in the chat for Suzanne to pick up on. Any waves?
Oh, well, do you know, there is a flurry coming through at the moment.
Flurry now, good. We like a little flurry. So we've got 10 minutes worth, so that's good. We got a flurry. So who's the first person we can ask to ask their questions?
Marie Sennett has asked Lily if there's a particular cash flow software that you would recommend.
Yeah, so software called Voyant. The reason that we've looked at a couple of them, the reason that that's the one that we've gone with at the moment is just purely because once you've input the information, when the information actually comes out, it's quite clear and concise to look at. So if you're looking through it with a client, then it's quite a nice model to go through, whereas some of them can almost be a bit too detailed. So yeah, ours is Voyant that we're using.
So did you say it was Voyant or
yeah.
Buoyant? Voyant. And is that for personal cash flow, or is that for business, or for both? What would you say that's useful for?
Both, yeah. Any you can combine. So you can set timelines, and then you can set milestones and life events. So you can combine personal, business, whatever you want to. You can combine whole families, or just do it on individuals as well.
Right, lovely. Thank you. Suzanne, you said we had a flurry. So who's the next person that we could ask to actually ask their question as well? They can ask it out loud if we can name them.
All right, Julie. Julie has asked a question. I don't know if she wants to put it directly to Lily.
Lily, hi. This is. Do you require a signed LOA prior to a client meeting?
We don't require it prior to a meeting, but depending on the information that we would need to find out from the client's existing provider, we would normally get a signed LOA, yes.
So Olivia, can I just chip in there? Because I might be like many of you. I know a lot of TLAs, three-letter abbreviations, but I don't know an LOA. And probably you'll tell me.
Letter of authority. It's a letter of authority.
There you go. So we got the answer from Julie there. So I assumed that TLA was the same TLA you were thinking of as well, then Olivia, and everyone else was thinking, come on, Colin, we knew that. That's what that TLA was.
Yeah, so a letter of authority we would send to a client's existing pension provider as an example, and then we would ask them, we actually asked them 36 questions to be precise, but we asked them a whole host of questions just to find out exactly what the client's got currently. Have they got any guarantees? Is there anything else that we can do with that? But yes, that's the letter of authority.
Great, thank you. So thank you, Julie, for asking that question, because we now, every day is a school day and we now know what that TLA stood for if we didn't know before. So thank you. Suzanne, who's the next person with a question?
Right, the next one in the spotlight is Julian Wood from, where's Julian?
Julian he's on my bottom left, but he could be anywhere else.
He could be anywhere. So, Julian is, I'll let Julian step in, but I'll pass you over to Julian for his question.
Hi, Lily. I was going to ask you that I'm finding in the car world, obtaining credit for people who have either been on furlough or on a bounce back loan is sometimes proving fairly challenging. How have you been advising people on what offers have been available, what to take, what to be careful of, and sort of what are the potential pitfalls that you've come across?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Julian. So from a kind of a mortgage point of view, we found that especially a lot of clients that are in the retail industry, if they've been on furlough, the lenders are being really quite cautious, and the lenders are also not being very favourable for anybody that's self-employed at the moment. One of the ways that we found kind of combating this is, as people then return to work, once they've had a few months worth of salary coming through on pay slips, then it's looking a bit easier. And also, anybody mortgage wise, what we're also finding is the lower loan to value. So if we start looking at kind of a 25% deposit into a property, then that is helping. Where we've got clients that are trying to do a smaller deposit, so a higher loan to value, so more of a 10% deposit, what we're finding is they're more tricky, or the interest rates are not as favourable.
Sure. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Julian, for asking that question. Perhaps it's highlighted to maybe some of us who didn't realise, oh yeah, so furlough is having an impact on that as well. So, and thank you, Olivia, for your answer. Suzanne, who's next on our flurry list?
We've got lovely Kate. Kate asks, well, that's a quick one, really.
So, Kate?
I just wondered, Lily, if your clients were mostly employed or mostly self-employed, because I do have this theory that employed people might feel that they're already taken care of by their business, but I might be completely wrong.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, we've got quite a variation, truthfully, and there are some clients that I work with that we actually look after their workplace pensions, so they've got their workplace pensions with me. But I think, especially as pensions have been more in the news and people have been made to sign up to workplace pensions, and it's kind of brought it to the forefront of people's minds. But I think it just depends, truthfully. We're happy to help anybody, really. And the majority of people that we deal with it's so varied, so varied.
Great. Thank you, Kate. And thank you, Olivia, for that answer. Suzanne, anybody else on the flurry list?
No, I think that's the end of our flurry list.
We've flurried. So thank you for asking those questions from everyone. Any further questions from anyone? Give us a wave if that is the case before we close off with Lily. I'm seeing some head scratching, but not some waving. So, Lily, it looks like that we've exhausted people's questions. So thank you ever so much for joining us. Thank you for being one of the sponsors of this event. Yeah, and people are now doing their little rounds of applause and thanking you for sharing your top tips, both in terms of just us thinking about our business, but also sharing a little bit about what you do as well at Brightside. So thank you for being a sponsor and thank you for your answers today.
Oh, thanks very much for having me.
Great. So again, like all of our sponsors, if you think Lily can be a further help to you, then do get in contact. And Lily, perhaps if you could pop any contact details in the chat, we can make sure that those are sent out to everybody via the chat function as well. So great. Thank you. We're going to hand back to Alan now.